So this final video is going to be kind of a loop of two sections of the paths. This one we're on now used to be called Twin Pines Path for a reason which I'll show you in a second. I call it Hound Heaven Path now, I think, for another reason that I'll also show you in a second. But this is really one of the older paths on the property, I think, at least as far as these recently constructed paths are concerned. And this one section up here, a lot of really amazing stuff happened here. This section of the property was a real mess. There was huge storms come through here on occasion, and they, of course, as I mentioned in earlier videos, they tend to knock down pine trees, like this one right here falling down. You can see that. That's a very big, I mean, that's a 3.5 foot in diameter southern pine, very tall, very heavy, and they have very shallow root systems, so when big storms come through and blow just right, they knock them over, especially if the ground's wet. And that one's being held up by a combination of a cherry and an oak. So I don't know how long that one's going to stay, but over here to the left, there was just you couldn't see 5 feet in front of your face. It was just fallen pines everywhere, crisscrossed in here. Really quite phenomenal. And so this took a long time to clear out. All this, you can see there's a big critter pile over there, and there's a huge critter pile that runs from here down this entire gully, all the way down there. And all in here, it was just fallen pines that I diced up. And what's really cool about this, let me get in here to show you. There just happened to be, see, there's a root ball from a fallen pine, there's a root ball from a fallen pine, there's a root ball from a fallen pine, all in here, just pine trees everywhere. This right here, let me stand on this root ball, that was and is a ravine or a gully about 8 feet deep right there. And so I just took all these chunked up, chainsawed chunks of pine that I cut up, and I piled them in there, and then covered them with all this other brush that I cleared out. It worked out really, really well. And then over here, I made kind of a Andy Goldsworthy. If any of you have seen the movie Rivers and Tides, this is kind of an Andy Goldsworthy tribute, right? You see that kind of snake's tail I made running down there of detritus. Cut up old pines. I made a little path in between them in case anybody needed to walk between them. Might as well walk between them now. It's not on the path, it's not on the trail per se, but it's kind of a neat thing. I mean, you can kind of tell how much stuff we're dealing with here. I mean, that's just a mountain of material. Took more than a few months and quite a few hours to collect all this stuff and pile it up. And yet the end result, as you can see, especially with this beautiful light, I mean, look at that. Isn't that lovely? And like I said, in the future, we're now in mid-November, coming up on mid-November of 2022, and there was major leaf fall here just in the last couple of days. So we just missed the best, it's a very, very short window we had for fall foliage this year because of the drought, I think, that we're having. So maybe in the future I'll be able to get these trees in their full majesty, but still quite a lovely piece of land. And check this out. One of these storms, when they come through, sometimes they twist the tops of the pines. You see that? That pine tree right up there was shooting way up there, and the storm took it and twisted it around, and it exploded. And it would already be on the ground, but it's being held up by these other pines that are about to fall. So that is definitely something. If any of you ever see anything like that in the woods and get inspired to try to chainsaw it, do not. Very dangerous. Just wait. Let it fall on its own. But everything else pretty much cleared out. We had a huge pine right here. Huge. You can see that's about a 3 foot diameter pine. And it fell in this direction. And I cut it all up and then stacked it in a really long critter house right there that is already inhabited by more than a few of my rodent friends, and rabbits, I'm sure, as well. Are rabbits members of Rodentia? I'm not sure about that, but either way, just as awesome as any other animal, I guess. So, that is that. This was really, really ended up beautiful. This is just, I mean, look at that. I mean, that is just beautiful. Especially with this light. Something else. Lovely. Just lovely. Anyway, so the reason why this particular path was originally called Twin Pines is because this pine tree had two trunks. And you can actually see, it used to be, both of them were standing. They were both very, very, very tall. And of course, one after another, they fell. First this one fell. And then later, this one fell. And so the path really could no longer be called Twin Pines at that point, but we can call it Hound Heaven because almost all of the dogs, wonderful dogs who've lived on the land, are buried here in this neat, beautiful little cemetery. And so we have, let's see, Misty is there. There's Billy. Mabel's back there. Grizz, that's a monument to Grizz. I don't think Grizz is actually there, but that's a monument to Grizz. Who else do we have that I'm forgetting? There are two more. I said Mabel, Misty, Billy, Homer. Homer's there. And Katie. Homer and Katie, or Katie and Homer, one of the two. So all of the dogs are at least memorialized here except for Nuka, the last dog to live here, and she is buried elsewhere. And yet this is what I call Hound Heaven. It's a really peaceful little spot. And yeah, so I think at some point I may plant some ground cover here and make it a little more peaceful, lush. But it's turning out really, 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 really nice. There were even more fallen pines right here. The top, of course, of this twin pines trunk, the first one that fell all the way up here, and with several other pine trees, the stumps of which are all over here. And I diced them all up with the chainsaw and made this really long critter condo, I call it, that runs, that kind of separates the blue path right over there from this. This is, I guess, a deep red or an orange path. Anyway, that's what that is. And there was a lot to cut up here, so I had to be very creative with how I did my critter houses. But it worked out well. It worked out well. Be interesting to see how they all evolve, as they sink down and melt back into the earth over the next several years. See, this is that just would love to clear that out, but that is beyond my talent level. That is a lot of weight hanging there very precariously, so I will just wait on that. Just going to wait on that. So yeah, on we go. And coming up to one of my favorite trees. I have so many. I love trees. Actually, as much as animals, really. Almost, anyway. And this is one of my favorite trees right here. This is a red oak. And it is old. That is an old, beautiful red oak. Very tall, very old. Beautiful. And for perspective, that's 4 feet in diameter right there, in case anyone's wondering. Lots of blowdown here. Let me come around the corner here, and I'll tell another neat little story. Curving around here. I think in the future there was an old oak. You can see the stump right there. There was a white oak that fell right there. And I harvested it for firewood last year. And as I was doing it, I ended up walking down this way, down this hill. And it runs right down to the spring path down there, which eventually this walk is going to end up down there. We're going to make a big loop that goes down there. And I was going to, someday the dream is to kind of get some railroad ties and make a beautiful undulating stairwell here that connects the two. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I thought that'd be interesting. And here's interesting. Here's a little concrete nativity that's been there forever. And one year there was almost a hurricane that came through. Oh, not a hurricane, tornado. And there were like 6 pine trees that fell, and they all fell crisscrossed over this nativity scene and didn't touch it, which, that was pretty cool. So I ended up clearing all those out and piling them up over here. And yeah, so that's kind of neat. And up on this ridge right up here is where there was an 1800s Cherokee cabin apparently here. And of course the freshwater spring is down the hill, so this is where the cabin apparently was, and the chimney was here. There were original building stones of it you could find all over up here on this little ridge. And there was a path, a really steep path, that ran down to the spring where they got their water, which is right down at the base of this hill. And it's too steep to safely navigate, so we made the other paths instead. But that's kind of neat. This is where people used to live, right here on the land, before there were any other houses. What I've heard anyway. And this is a hedge. This thorny thing here. My goodness gracious, this is some plant right here. Look at that, would you? I mean, that is... You don't want to be running headfirst into that. And this used to be a wall. You couldn't see through this. And I think folks planted these as a hedge back in the day, which makes sense because it makes a wall of thorns that you don't want to mess with. But I kind of liked them. You can tell where it was because all these sprouts have come up since I pruned it last year. But that's that. And then it has blooms in the spring, and it has these unusual oranges. These, I don't know what they're called, but look at that, would you? It has these unusual fruits. They're apparently very, very, is it a quince maybe? I don't know. They're apparently very, very bitter. But anyway, I digress, as I want to do. So on we go. We come here now to this intersection we have been at a number of times before, just coming at it from a different direction. This is where the orange path, where the dog cemetery path connects with the blue path where we've been. And we'll take a left here, where we have also walked before on previous videos. And we will take a left here and start down a path that we have not walked before, which is called the spring path, the light blue path. And for reference, if you walk to the right here, that's the blue path that heads back up to that sunrise point and the bagua table up there. And now we're walking down here along an erosion gully to the left here that I've filled in with a lot of work. I've cleared, you can tell from here, I've done a lot of clearing on this hillside. Still have quite a bit to pick up, but it is really opening up quite nicely. And this hillside had a lot of junk on it. All those ferns, look at those pretty ferns. So I cleared all it off and piled all that stuff in this erosion gully here, which you'll see it runs from right there, and it runs pretty deep, 3, 4, 5 feet deep, all the way down to the spring. We're going to walk right alongside of it here. And so quite a bit of this detritus on the hillside here will be put into critter piles halfway up, and then the rest I'll drag downhill, and I'll end up putting all of it in this ravine here to fill in and hopefully stop that erosion. But it is really working well. This path channels water. You're going to see a lot more evidence of that as we proceed further along with all the roots that it's washing away. And at some point I have to put some railroad tie berms in here to divert the flow of water, into the gully is what I want to do, is to get the water, instead of flowing down this path and keep washing out the roots, we'll divert the water here to the left so it'll go into that gully. But that again is another project for another day. But it's still kind of neat. It's kind of mossy. All these ferns growing up all around these roots. It's kind of cool. I bet if I got those berms put in and dropped a bunch of mulch on it, it pretty much would just settle in and get nice and soft for walking. It's kind of difficult to walk now. So here we are at another intersection where we have been before. The perimeter path, which we walked in 2 videos heads here to the right. We've walked that in the last video, the red path, and now the red path joins, because this is now also the perimeter of the land, it joins the spring path here. The spring is right here. There are apparently seven freshwater springs that feed the lake. We'll see the lake in a minute. And one of the biggest ones comes out right here. So there's a constant and steady stream of water that flows out from right there and flows down this little rivulet to the lake. And yeah, so let's check out this hillside. Show you guys that. Yeah, you can really see all that stuff I've been throwing in there. There's a lot of work left to be done. There's the property line there that runs up the hill. And then this is all the neighbor's land. I cleaned up a little bit of it for him just to kind of open it up, but I'm going to tend to leave it alone. It actually looks pretty nice as is. I mean, this is pretty open as is. Some beautiful ferns in here as well. This is nature, you know, ultimately does a much better job than any human can. It just takes nature a lot longer, especially if humans come through and clear cut stuff and screw it up. But it is what it is. We do what we can. Anyway, it's quite lovely. We'll move down here. For any of you who read the tribute I wrote for my brother, one of the chapters deals with him trying to dam this spring, which is why his boots are right over there. His little tribute is right there. That's kind of a Todd memorial right there. And this spring he tried to dam it, and temporarily he succeeded. He got these, I don't know if you can see it. Let's see. Yeah, there's a piece you can see. Let me come around here, I'll show you. He got these pieces of marble from his workplace at the time, and he rammed them into the ground, and he made these pools. And then the spring would come out and fill this pool here, and then it would waterfall over, and it filled that pool there, and it waterfalled over, and I think there was one other. I think it was 3 waterfalls. And boy, he worked so long on that, and it really was beautiful. But of course, the ground is really porous here, and so as the pressure built up on those pools, it ended up inevitably continually going around his walls, and it never would hold. On heavy rain days, it still does have a series of waterfalls. But so anyone who has read that book, that particular chapter of the book is written about this spot and Todd's work here. And Todd set up these stones as kind of memorial markers. Really made it really lovely. It still is quite lovely here. His work still lives on here. It's a really very, very peaceful spot. And then we have a promontory here with a bench where you can sit and enjoy the spring view. Stepping stone here. I think those are nuthatches talking to us. Not exactly good at my bird calls. Anyway, the spring, as you can see, flows down here. And what's really interesting about the spring is, back in the day, when was that day? When did Todd and I do that? Todd and I decided we wanted the spring to run closer to the path, not realizing that the spring marked the property line. And so we took mattocks and shovels, and we diverted this spring from the way its natural path, which it flows that way, and we ran it here, along the path, and changed the property line. And needless to say, Mom and Lawrence weren't very thrilled about that. But recently, I undid that work, and I have now the spring flows back in its original destination, its original flow, which is right here. And that's part of what this does, is it helps divert the water. I've sunk in a bunch of material here and made a little critter house to kind of keep the water flowing this way. Most of it does, some of it still doesn't. I'll show you that in a second. But this land opened up really nice. This also took a long time to prune out. As you can tell, there was a lot of stuff to to prune out and stack here. There are critter houses like this all over in here. I tried to tuck them further away up the hill so they wouldn't be as readily visible. But it's beautiful now. And again, this is just like everywhere else. You couldn't see 15 feet when the leaves were on the trees. You couldn't see up there at all. And it really does open up very, very nicely. Very pretty. This promontory here where you see the spring now does run way over there on its original line. And that promontory is just like a bog. I think over time, as the spring maybe goes deeper and deeper, it'll dry out a little bit. But here's the line where Todd and I dug out. You can see, and I filled it with pine chunks from some of the pine trees fallen pine trees that I chunked up and cut up to kind of stop the flow and keep pushing the water back where it used to go. And it's starting to work. It's going to fill in. It's going to take some time because we worked hard at it. It's pretty funny. But then I think 3 of the 7 springs are under the lake itself feeding it. The one I talked about we just passed, and I think there are 3 more springs over here. One of the tributaries runs here and connects and feeds the lake. This is just this is there's so many spots you could call my favorite, but this little flow right here is just really, really smooth to walk. It's very enjoyable, especially now that it looks like this to the left, or to the right, of course, if you're walking the other direction. But big oak tree again. Some really nice trees here. And then this promontory here, coming up here, here you go. Here you can see how the springs come together and then feed the lake. Then this promontory right up here was starting right about at this beech tree on the right. For about 50 to 100 feet up was just brambles, those really thick, thorny, green, you know the ones, and thorn vines. Horrible. And hey, here's one coming up again. Here's one coming up again. This bad boy right here. Yeah, they are something. Anyway, so cleared this out, and it is just beautiful now. Beautiful. And you couldn't even, this was not even envisionable. And it is a really nice little promontory. The fact, one of the Canada geese pairs who regularly visits originally tried to nest right on this promontory, but didn't find it safe enough, and they found somewhere else to have their babies. We have a lot of Canada geese that come through and hang out for a while, and some of them stay and raise their young, or try to anyway. Yeah, lots of critter houses. Lots of places for my rodent friends. What was really cool is I cleared this section out over a year ago, and every tree almost is you can notice the growth. It's noticeably larger. Really, really cool. I didn't expect to see anything noticeably as far as tree growth goes for 5-10 years. And right away, one season, you can tell how happy the trees are that it's cleared out the way it is. Really cool. All right. That is essentially it. I'm going to now walk right around the corner up here and then turn around and walk the same thing in reverse in silence so you can enjoy. All right. Yeah, and as usual, any questions or comments, you can email me at rediscoveringpeace99@protonmail.com. Other than that, we'll film it in reverse in silence and you can enjoy the walk. Peace out.